did my conceptual interview at the STEM Academy, and this school is a magnet school, which means that students must apply via essays, and they're chosen based on this very non-biased process where they write these essays. It doesn't have any information about who they are, their background, their gender, and teachers and other staff members will read these and they can either get accepted or not based off of these essays. And I noticed through discussion and just entering the school in general, students are met with very passionate educators and innovative teaching methods. And this school really values collaborative learning and critical thinking, including academic rigor, student engagement, and even student agency, where they encourage students to use the voice that they have and teach them how to do that, while focusing on student wellness and well-being as a whole. As for my classroom, I got to observe a 10th grade biology class along with an environmental and sustainability class. The students chosen for this interview were from the biology class, and I interviewed one girl, we'll call her student A, and then one boy, student B. My discussion with these students included areas on adaptations and extinction, and one of the first questions that I asked them was to complete a drawing of an organism they thought would be able to survive in the Arctic or the tundra. And student A chose to draw a single-celled bacteria, which I thought was very interesting and out of the box. But she told me it wasn't innovative. And I was shocked by this because to me, again, this was very out of the box to the sort of question I was asking. Typically, students would draw a polar bear or a bird, something like that. So I was thinking maybe she thought the diagram she drew wasn't innovative because what she's doing at the STEM Academy has to be very involved, detail-oriented, sometimes even super complex. So to her eyes, just that little drawing wasn't something special, but to me it was really cool. And then when talking more about her bacteria, she said it was around when Earth was formed and then it became non-existent. And I really wish I would have asked her what she meant by this or why did it become non-existent, and I could have used this as a segue into talking about extinction because that would have been my next topic of interest. And even later talking about extinction with her, I could have gone back to her diagram of how she said it went extinct. I don't know, I feel like I could have framed that a lot better. And then when I asked her what she thought adaptations were, she responded with getting used to the environment surrounding you and changing yourself to live with the environment. And I think she has a really good beginner's view on adaptations, but is missing some key components and general rules followed in nature regarding this topic. And however, to me, she's kind of viewing adaptations more on the organismic level and not population level, since she said getting used to the environment. And later I will mention student B's similar standpoint on this misconception that I see students have regarding organismic level through adaptations. But when I gave her an example of a species that went extinct, one of her responses was that the species didn't have enough time to adapt when their environment was ruined. And to me, this emphasizes that she knows evolution is a slow process. It's not quick. And I think she does understand that the environment influences adaptations. But I wish I would have asked her a question regarding this connection between environmental factors changing slowly to the reason why organisms and populations change slowly as well. And this could have been a discussion to have as a whole class. maybe not necessarily in the interview per se. But as for student B, we started with the same activity, drawing an organism, and he chose to draw a bird with some thick feathers for insulation. And when I asked him why he drew the thick feathers or the function behind it, he said to stay their actual body temp, so the bird could stay its actual body temperature. And this would have been a great time for me to chime in and ask him if he knew what this was called, which we know as homeostasis. But I later, listening back to the interview, I was like, Emma, you missed a key area that you could have asked him a question on, but it's okay. And then after I gave him the extinct species example, he said that the species couldn't compete with the dogs for food, so the dogs were naturally selected, and that's why they became extinct. Of course, I had to ask him what he thinks natural selection is, to which he said things like, when a species is more fit for the environment, if an animal adapts, it will make it more fit for the environment. Animals have to find a way to be more fit. And this is a great start for the whole natural selection discussion and evolution. But I think there is a huge misconception here, similar to what student A was saying, that animals have to find a way to be more fit, when really this is about natural selection leading to adaptations of species over time. And it naturally results from this genetic variation in a population, and that some of these variants may be able to leave more offspring in the next generation than other variants. In other words, animals don't try to adapt. They don't want to adapt. It just happens because certain animals have variants that allow them to survive in their environment, and they can reproduce and have offspring with those similar variants. And I think that's a misconception that a lot of students have going into this unit of biology. And then finally, when I asked him if humans are evolving, he took a different route, and he said that they evolve with technology and finding new ways to live and innovate and become more fit in today's world. So I think he understands that we're trying to survive, and that's a goal through adaptations and natural selection. But another big part of this is the goal of being able to reproduce and have offspring. That is one of the biggest goals that animals have in life. And if I were in a classroom, I would have loved to include a follow-up discussion on how humans adapt in order to produce information to others. By conducting these interviews, I learned the importance about asking questions that are in their grade level, but also creating questions that require thoughtful ideas. And if I were to do this activity again, I would have chosen better questions that provoke more intriguing responses from them. Not that their answers weren't insightful. I thought it was a good start, but I feel like they were more straightforward, that they were trying to give me the right answer. And I feel partially to blame for that because I think questions are a big part of this. But one thing I thought was effective was letting the students know this will be a calm conversation just to try to understand their thoughts on adaptations, because I feel at their school, they're always watched. Teachers are always watching what they're doing. They don't really get a chance to just lay back and really enjoy the process of learning science. And I just wanted to show them that it's okay to not know the answer and kind of break this mistake stigma going into it, that I just want to hear your thoughts about this topic and you will learn from them later down the road. So it's okay to not know the answer. Overall, I just think because they go to such an academic rigor school that they may just always try to give the right answer always, instead of just thinking about the why and how of what they just said or what they're learning about. And lastly, science is an area where there are a lot of misconceptions, and I think it's really important to address them when applicable. And as a teacher, I really want to try to use these misconceptions to show students how far their learning has come after teaching a unit. So for example, I could start the unit off with just a quick summary of what we might be learning about and ask them to write down something they believe about that. And then they keep hold of it, or I can take it. And then at the end of the unit, we pull those out and we read them. And we really reflect on what we learned throughout that unit and see if our thoughts or misconceptions have changed throughout learning together. And I think it's important to use these questioning techniques to encourage critical thinking and reflection through that. And I know it's not realistic to do these conceptual interviews for every unit with every teacher or with every student, but I believe it's beneficial to have some sort of way to gauge where my students are on a topic, so I also know what areas I want to hit more or address or really focus on. And this could be as easy as a classroom discussion, a pre-unit test, those believe kind of sentence formats. Those were just some of the things I learned throughout these conceptual interviews, and I thought it was really interesting to hear what they said, but then also listen back and really try to analyze why they said that, because when I was interviewing them, I feel like I wasn't really hearing what they were saying. And I feel if I would have understood what they were saying, I could have asked better questions or better follow-up questions. But that's something that I can work on in the future through this.